What if I told you that every time you explain yourself, you lose power? Think about it. The moment someone questions your decisions, criticizes your actions, or misunderstands your intentions, your first instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to justify, to prove your innocence. But what if that's exactly what makes you look weak? What if the people who command the most respect are not the ones who have the best arguments, but the ones who never feel the need to argue at all? Machiavelli understood a brutal truth about human nature. The person who explains is seeking approval. The person who remains calm already has it. Tonight, you're going to discover why silence terrifies manipulators, why justification destroys authority, and why powerful people never explain themselves. Stay until the end, because the final lesson might completely change the way you handle criticism forever. If you're enjoying this deep dive into power, psychology, and Machiavellian wisdom, take 1 second to subscribe. Most people spend their lives reacting emotionally. A small few learn how human nature truly works. If you're one of them, subscribe now and join us as we explore the hidden laws of power, influence, and mental mastery. If this video opened your eyes, don't leave without subscribing, because the truth is, most people will hear these lessons and immediately go back to seeking approval, back to explaining themselves, back to giving away their power. But a few people will actually apply them. The question is, which one are you? Subscribe now and step deeper into the psychology of power. I'll see you in the next lesson. Comment below. I don't need to explain myself. Let's see how many people are ready to stop seeking validation and start building true inner authority. The moment you start explaining yourself, you surrender something valuable, not your argument, not your reputation, your power. Most people spend their lives trying to be understood. They explain their decisions. They justify their actions. They defend their intentions. They believe that if they can just find the right words, people will finally see their side of the story. But the world doesn't work that way. People rarely judge you by the logic of your explanation. They judge you by the energy behind it. And when someone feels compelled to explain every move they make, they reveal something dangerous: dependence on approval. Machiavelli understood a truth that modern society prefers to ignore. Power belongs to those who remain centered in their own reality, not those who constantly seek validation from others. Today, we will uncover why powerful people rarely explain themselves, why excessive justification destroys respect, and how silence became one of the most feared weapons in the psychology of influence. But be warned, this lesson requires you to let go of a habit you have carried since childhood: the need to be understood. Law 1. Explanation is often a request for permission. Think about what happens when someone questions your decision. Immediately, your mind races. You begin collecting evidence, building arguments, searching for ways to prove yourself. Why? Because deep down, you believe the other person has the authority to approve or reject your reality. This is where weakness begins. The moment you feel obligated to justify yourself, you unconsciously place the other person above you. You become the applicant. They become the judge. You become the defendant. They become the jury. Most people never notice this shift, but everyone feels it. Authority is not claimed through words. It is communicated through certainty. And certainty does not beg for acceptance. It stands on its own. Law 2. The more you explain, the less people listen. There is a strange paradox in human nature. The more desperately you try to convince people, the more suspicious they become. Why? Because confidence is calm. Confidence is brief. Confidence is relaxed. Insecurity is what over-explains. Insecurity is what floods conversations with unnecessary details. Insecurity is what desperately tries to close every possible misunderstanding. When people sense this energy, they stop listening to your words, they start analyzing your need, and that need immediately lowers your perceived value. Powerful individuals understand something different. They make their point, then they stop. No lengthy defense, no emotional speeches, no desperate attempts to win everyone over, because they know respect is rarely earned through explanation. It is earned through composure. Law 3. Silence creates uncertainty. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. Most people think silence is passive, weak, defensive. It isn't. Silence creates a psychological vacuum, and human beings are uncomfortable with vacuums. Imagine someone criticizes you. They expect resistance. They expect emotion. They expect an argument. Instead, you simply look at them, calm, still, unbothered. Suddenly, the burden shifts. Now they feel compelled to continue talking, to justify themselves, to fill the uncomfortable space. Without saying a word, you have reversed the dynamic. This is why silence often feels intimidating. People cannot easily control what they can't read, and nothing is harder to read than a person who refuses to react. Law 4. Your reaction reveals your wounds. Pay attention to what triggers you, because every defensive reaction points toward an insecurity. If someone calls you lazy and you become furious, ask yourself why. If someone questions your intelligence and you immediately launch into a defense, ask yourself why. Strong people are not immune to criticism. They simply know who they are. And when you know who you are, outside opinions lose their power. The truth is uncomfortable. Many of the insults that hurt us hurt because a small part of us fears they might be true. This is why self-awareness is the ultimate shield. The more honest you become with yourself, the less vulnerable you become to the judgments of others. You cannot shame someone who has already accepted their imperfections. Law 5. Stop managing other people's perceptions. One of the greatest wastes of energy is trying to control what everyone thinks about you. It cannot be done. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, someone will misunderstand. No matter how clear you are, someone will criticize. No matter how good your intentions are, someone will question them. The powerful accept this reality. They stop managing perceptions. They start managing actions. Instead of asking, how do I make them understand me? They ask, did I act according to my values? That is the only question that matters, because your reputation lives in other people's minds. But your character lives within you, and only one of those is under your control. Law 6. Mystery attracts respect. Human beings are fascinated by what they cannot fully understand. This is why mystery creates influence. When you explain everything, people stop wondering. When you reveal every thought, every motive, every emotion, there is nothing left to discover. You become predictable, and predictability often becomes invisibility. The strongest presence in any room is usually the person who speaks only when necessary, the person who does not rush to fill every silence, the person who remains grounded even under pressure, not because they are hiding, but because they understand that not everything requires an explanation. Some things require only confidence. Law 7. The highest form of power. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was not manipulation, it was self-mastery. The strongest person is not the one who wins every argument. The strongest person is the one who no longer needs to. Imagine reaching a point where criticism no longer controls your emotions, where accusations no longer force you into defense, where misunderstanding no longer terrifies you. That is freedom, because true power begins when your sense of worth stops depending on the approval of strangers. The world becomes much quieter, much simpler, much easier to navigate. You stop performing, you stop proving, you stop explaining. And in that silence, people begin to feel something different about you, something they cannot quite describe. Presence, certainty, authority. Are the next 7 days, try a simple experiment. When someone questions your choices, resist the urge to explain. When someone misunderstands you, resist the urge to correct every detail. When someone judges you unfairly, resist the urge to defend yourself. Observe what happens. Observe how much energy you recover. Observe how much calmer you become. Observe how many conflicts disappear before they even begin. Because the people who command the most respect are rarely the loudest. They are rarely the most persuasive. They are the ones who understand a timeless truth. You do not need everyone to understand you. You only need to understand yourself. And once you do, silence becomes stronger than any explanation you could ever give. Law 8. Let them misunderstand you. One of the most expensive addictions in modern life is the addiction to being understood. People spend years trying to control how others perceive them. They explain, they clarify, they defend. They rewrite conversations in their heads long after they are over, all because they fear being misunderstood. But Machiavelli would ask a simple question. Why are you giving strangers that much power over your peace? The truth is brutal. Most people are not trying to understand you. They are trying to confirm the story they have already created about you. No amount of explanation can change a mind that has already chosen its conclusion. This is why wise people stop chasing understanding. They let people think what they want, not because they are weak, because they understand something deeper. Your life becomes much lighter when you stop carrying the burden of other people's interpretations. Sometimes the strongest response is nothing. Let them misunderstand. Let them speculate. Let them create stories. Reality eventually exposes truth far better than arguments ever will. Law 9. People respect what they cannot control. Most human interactions are hidden negotiations. Not for money, not for resources, for control. The moment someone provokes you and gets an emotional reaction, they gain information. They discover what triggers you. They discover what you fear. They discover where your armor is weakest. And once someone knows your weak points, influencing you becomes easier. This is why emotional discipline is one of the rarest forms of power. Imagine two people receiving criticism. One explodes. The other remains calm. Which person appears stronger? Which person seems harder to manipulate? Which person commands more respect? The answer is obvious. People naturally respect those they cannot easily control, and control becomes impossible when your emotions no longer belong to the crowd. Law 10. The most dangerous person in the room is the most centered. There is a misconception that power comes from aggression. It doesn't. Aggression often hides insecurity. True power comes from stability. A storm does not intimidate a mountain. Why? Because the mountain does not react. Most people live as emotional weather vanes. Every opinion changes them. Every criticism shakes them. Every disagreement disturbs their inner peace. But the powerful develop an internal center, a place untouched by applause, a place untouched by rejection, a place untouched by praise or criticism. When you reach this state, something remarkable happens. People stop influencing your emotions. And because they stop influencing your emotions, they start respecting you, not consciously, instinctively. Law 11, stop proving your value. Look around. Everyone is trying to prove something, trying to prove they're successful, trying to prove they're intelligent, trying to prove they're attractive, trying to prove they're important. It never ends. And the more someone tries to prove their value, the more doubt they create. Because genuine value does not advertise itself. A diamond does not announce its worth. Gold does not beg for recognition. Their value exists regardless of who notices. The same principle applies to people. When you constantly explain your achievements, defend your reputation, or justify your decisions, you communicate uncertainty. You imply that your value depends on external approval. But when you know your worth internally, something changes. You stop performing. You stop convincing. You stop chasing validation. And paradoxically, that is when people begin valuing you the most. Law 12. Silence forces people to reveal themselves. Most conversations contain two battles, the visible one and the invisible one. The visible battle is words. The invisible battle is information. Every time you speak unnecessarily, you reveal yourself, your fears, your motivations, your insecurities, your intentions. But silence works differently. Silence collects information. While others speak, they expose their worldview, their frustrations, their ambitions, their weaknesses. And because most people cannot tolerate silence, they eventually reveal far more than they intended. This is why great negotiators speak less, great leaders observe more, great strategists reveal less. The less you need to talk, the more you learn. And knowledge has always been one of the purest forms of power. Law 13. Detach from the need to win. This may be the hardest lesson of all. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every accusation deserves your response. Not every disagreement deserves your attention. Weak people fight every fight. Strong people choose their battles. Machiavelli understood that power is not about winning every confrontation. Power is about preserving your resources for what truly matters. The lion does not chase every animal in the forest. It chooses carefully. Your attention works the same way. The moment you stop trying to win every argument, you gain something far more valuable. Peace, clarity, focus. And ironically, people begin seeing you as stronger because desperation is loud, confidence is selective. The next time someone questions you, pause. The next time someone criticizes you, pause. The next time someone tries to bait you into defending yourself, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking to express my truth? Or am I speaking because I need their approval? That question alone can transform your life. Because the highest form of power is not controlling others, it is controlling yourself. And once you master that, no explanation is necessary. Law 14. The person who reacts loses the frame. Every social interaction has an invisible structure. Most people never notice it, yet it determines who holds power and who gives it away. Psychologists call it framing. Whoever controls the frame controls the emotional direction of the conversation. Imagine someone insults you. The moment you become defensive, they have successfully moved you into their frame. Now you are reacting to their reality. You are playing by their rules. You are trying to escape a prison they created. But powerful people do something different. They refuse the frame entirely. Instead of reacting, they observe. Instead of defending, they remain grounded. Instead of chasing approval, they maintain their own reality. The strongest frame is not dominance. The strongest frame is self-possession. It is the ability to remain rooted in your truth regardless of external pressure. Once you master this, people lose the ability to emotionally pull you in different directions, and that is where real influence begins. Law 15. Most people are addicted to validation. Validation is one of the most powerful drugs in existence. Unlike money, unlike status, unlike fame, validation feels personal. It feels necessary. It feels like survival. This is why people check their phones constantly. Why they obsess over likes. Why they replay conversations in their heads. Why criticism hurts so much. They are addicted to external confirmation. But there is a hidden cost. The more validation you need, the easier you become to control. Anyone who can give you approval can also take it away. Anyone who can influence your self-worth gains power over your behavior. Machiavelli understood this long before social media existed. The person who needs nothing becomes impossible to manipulate. The person who no longer seeks approval becomes free. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is no longer needing permission to be yourself. Law 16. Your enemies often reveal your next evolution. Most people view criticism as an attack. The wise view it as information. Not because every critic is right, far from it, but because criticism reveals patterns. Sometimes it reveals their insecurity. Sometimes it reveals your blind spot. Either way, it contains useful data. Weak people become emotional. Strong people become curious. When someone attacks you, ask, "What can I learn from this?" Not, "How do I prove them wrong?" One question creates growth. The other creates endless conflict. Machiavelli believed that understanding human nature was more valuable than understanding ideals. Your enemies often teach you more than your supporters ever will. Because supporters comfort you, enemies expose you, and exposure creates awareness. Awareness creates transformation. Law 17. Mystery increases perceived value. Notice something interesting. People rarely obsess over what they fully understand. They obsess over what remains uncertain, the unanswered message, the unfinished story, the person they cannot completely figure out. Mystery creates attention. This is why powerful individuals rarely reveal everything, not because they are deceptive, because they are disciplined. They understand that constant self-disclosure lowers perceived value. When people know every thought you have, every fear you carry, every plan you are pursuing, there is nothing left to discover. But when you reveal yourself gradually, people become curious. Curiosity creates engagement. Engagement creates influence. You do not need to become secretive. You simply need to stop narrating your entire existence. Some things are more powerful when they remain private. Law 18. Detachment creates magnetism. Here is one of life's strangest paradoxes. The harder you chase something, the faster it runs away. Respect, love, status, attention, approval, all of them operate under the same law. Neediness repels, detachment attracts. Why? Because neediness communicates lack. Detachment communicates abundance. When someone feels you need their approval, they feel pressure. When someone feels you are complete without it, they feel drawn toward you. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean becoming indifferent. It means understanding that your happiness cannot depend on outcomes you do not control. You can desire, you can pursue, you can work hard, but you cannot attach your identity to the result. The moment you do, you become vulnerable. The moment you let go, you become powerful. Law 19. Become your own authority. This is the final lesson, and perhaps the most important. Most people live as if the world is constantly grading them. They seek approval from parents, approval from bosses, approval from friends, approval from strangers. Their self-worth is outsourced, their confidence is rented, their identity belongs to the crowd. But power begins when you become your own authority, when your values become your compass, when your standards become your guide, when your opinion of yourself matters more than public opinion. This is not arrogance, it is sovereignty. Arrogance needs witnesses. Sovereignty does not. A sovereign person can stand alone, can be misunderstood, can be criticized, can be doubted, and still remain at peace, because their confidence comes from within, not from applause, not from validation, not from explanation. Machiavelli understood something that most people spend their entire lives learning. The world will always have opinions about you. Some will admire you, some will misunderstand you, some will criticize you, some will try to provoke you. You cannot control any of that. What you can control is your response. You can control your emotions, you can control your attention, you can control your silence, and in a world obsessed with explaining, proving, defending, and seeking approval, the person who remains calm becomes unforgettable. The person who remains centered becomes powerful. The person who no longer needs to explain themselves becomes free. Because true authority does not argue for its existence, it simply exists.